We are here. We are here. Hello, Will.
Marty.
I'm shrunken again. God, what is it with the...
You know what it might be. Oh. Nope, that didn't do it. That made it worse.
Oh, wait a minute. It could be. Hang on. God, now I'm all head. Oh, that's some ugly face. There you go. Now let's try that.
There you go.
It's a little better. I'm still a little short. I'm shrinking by the day. I think that's a... oh, that's much better.
Perfect.
Well, welcome to Studio Shrinkage number 49. 49. What? 49. Oh, sorry, you can't really. There it is. Okay. Today, I have 100 things that I've done since last time I talked to you.
Okay. I haven't done nothing since I last talked to you.
I've been through the war. The war, Will. Let's start
What
with...
war is on?
Let's start with cameras. Not cameras. That's a good one.
Okay.
So I had this shoot to do. By the way, I had a bunch of shoots to do, and every one of them got canceled, so that's good. But what? It forced me into bringing out my old Blackmagic 4K camera.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, I've had lots of debates about autofocus and why it's problematic for me to do lots of work that I do with autofocus, without autofocus, that it causes me an issue with not being able to use many cameras without them. As it turns out, that is not true anymore. It's I do some shoots from time to time where people are running around and moving. You have no choice but to do something like that with that. But in general, lots of times they're stationary people or they're moving left and right, which means focus really isn't going to be a problem. And so I started playing around with the Blackmagic, and I'll be gall darned if I didn't love it. Love manual.
Really?
A lot. Yeah. So this is what I've noticed. My Blackmagic 4K, which is an older one, has some great advantages and some great disadvantages. The biggest advantage is it's got built-in SSD. So you can just slop the drive in there, man. It is awesome. You can pick it up, pull it out, put it in your system. You can edit it. It's great. And almost no other cards do that. Now, you can many cameras do that, but many cameras, of course, allow you an external SSD, which you can plug into a port. But so that's the solution, really. The big disadvantage is, first of all, battery life is truly horrific. I mean, it's nightmarish. And I had this old V battery mount system, and as it turns out, it was the wrong kind because none of the batteries worked on it. So I found out that by replacing the V mount, I was able to I actually couldn't run out. I have two batteries. I swear I ran it for 5 hours, and I have the switch on it and the camera on it, and big monitor on it, and an audio device, all running simultaneously. It's 4 hours. It was still running. It was ridiculous. And last time I pushed it had 3 dots instead of 4. I mean, this thing must run all day. It's unbelievably great. It's heavy. Yeah. They're really heavy, but they're really worth having. So they solved a lot of problems.
The trade-off's worth it.
Yeah. The focus thing's awesome. I love the cinema look. Although it's very red. The problem with my camera is the amount of stops you have available to you. It's just not. The new ones are much better. So the low level light performance is crap. So if you're inside, in fact, if you're inside almost everywhere, I think it's going to be a problem unless it's a very big open space with a lot of light coming through. So you have to use lighting. But with lighting, it looks fabulous. So, which means that I don't know that I have to, especially given, in my particular case, I have all these old EF lenses, which are beautiful, by the way. The Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro, it looks awful appealing now. As opposed, and it's $2,500 versus
very affordable.
Yeah, comparatively speaking. So I could sell a bunch of stuff and maybe pick that up, and it would be a real solve a lot of problems for me. Plus, I could use this 4K as a backup.
Yeah.
And they look the same. I mean, in terms of output, they're not quite as much. Like I said, they don't have as much light gathering capabilities, but other than that, they're great. So that solved the whole big problem for me. And I spent quite a long time setting up the battery rig. But as it turns out, it's pretty great. So I'm going to start using that. And I've got all these other batteries now, these Sony type batteries, the L series batteries, which are really, really great batteries, but they didn't last that long on many things. And they're perfect. Now that I've actually replaced them all, they're perfect for lights. So I moved those all over, and now I've got this lighting. Anyway, this is something that's probably going to help anybody whatsoever, except that I will tell you that look at cinema cameras again, and look at the idea of shooting manually, because you can get a lot more visually. It's so much cooler. I mean, I was playing around with depth of field, and you just can't do it with autofocus cameras or set to autofocus. I mean, the idea of moving in and out of focus in the background stuff, it was cool. It was, I felt like an actual film person for a change instead of a schlep. So that was kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it took forever, unfortunately, to get there. But I think the timing is almost perfect because of the cost versus how much you get out of that Blackmagic 6K Pro.
Yeah, for me.
I don't think there's a lot out there at that price point that does all that.
No, I agree completely. Nothing. And I mean, I'm sure many people would argue about this camera, but for me, what's really changed though is the kind of video work I do from time to time. It's changed radically. I mean, it used to be I used to have to do a lot of run and gun stuff, and that's really hard to do without autofocus. By the way, it does have autofocus. People don't know that. It's not like it doesn't have an autofocus. It's just not multi point. What is it called? What is it?
Multi-point.
Yeah, thank you. Multi-point. There's like a box, and you focus on, and you hit the button, and it focuses. But actually, it's dependent very much on whether you have an EF autofocus lens or not. So if you set the autofocus up for on a lens you have, it works great, and you can it's got a focus outline for you, so you can see stuff, and you can see whether it's in focus or not, and it's cool. It's really cool, and way big time money saving because and it doesn't overheat. None of those things are. I solved I solved the battery problem, and I solved the autofocus problem, and now all of a sudden all these cameras and my old lenses become very valuable again, which is great because the cost of all this stuff, again, like I say, we're trying to shrink. We're trying to see old stuff that you might have that may be able to be useful again in today's world. And so EF style cans are now camera lenses are kind of out of date. Those are made by Canon, for those of you who don't know, and they've replaced. I don't know if they've replaced them, but the new version is RF, and they're beautiful lenses, and they cost a lot of money, but they're beautiful lenses. But the EF lenses are fine. They're really good. If you have a bunch of them, you can try and sell them for pennies on the dollar, or find somebody who happens to need them, or maybe you can reuse them for this. And so I bought a bunch of stuff I was in a shelf back there I was selling, and I took them all off. I brought it back in the system.
Nice.
So that's cool. Okay, I just had to do a single shot of I don't know if this will help anybody, but I had to do just a photo of a guy standing. He wanted us to do it in front of his window. And it's a beautiful window. It's overlooking, it's gorgeous. It overlooks this beautiful, water. It's just beautiful. This bay, this inlet. And the problem, of course, with that is, guess what? His face is going to be completely dark, and his background's this big color. So you know what I did? Now I'm sure this hasn't been done a million times before, but just so to pass on the tip, I shot him, and I focused very much on him, and then I took him out of the picture and shot the background. Then I brought it into Affinity, and I cut him completely out by masking him out, and I adjusted just his face and took some blend meshes off while I was playing around. It made him look better than he was. And then I plopped him on top of the image of the scenery. Gorgeous.
Okay.
Came out beautiful. He was like thrilled to death. So there you go. That's Marty's tip for the day. Okay. Can we talk about storage?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? Are you faced with storage problems?
Yes. Like, what do you mean? Just the space, amount of space, or? Yeah, I don't do nearly as much video work as you do, so I don't. I have a 8 terabyte for my backups of everything, and then I work off of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 portable drives, give or take, depending on what I'm doing. Lately, the newest thing, yeah. So they're all different sizes, starting with a 256 SSD that I upgraded. Those used to be the operating system on my big desktop. I upgraded those to the 512s and just use those as externals now.
Yeah.
And then I got a 1 terabyte, a 2 terabyte, and a 4 terabyte Western Digital passports. And then I've got the big 8 terabyte is just a stationary. It's not really, I wouldn't call it portable. It's one of those big desktop units before I don't know if it's a RAID or whatnot, but the 8 terabyte is nowhere near being full. I think I'm using a quarter of the space. It's more, again, mainly for backups of important stuff, but everything else constantly gets full. The main one I'm working off of is the 1 terabyte SSD, the little NVMe I made it's like the stick of gum. Yeah, and it's probably one of the fastest ones. So I put most of my working projects on that since it's super fast.
Yeah.
Anything I'm currently working on, and then dump it into the big drive when I'm done.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not that I'm running out, but when I do shoot more video or I'm working on a bigger project, I tend to fill everything up really quickly. And I know you constantly, if you're doing it for a living, you have to back it up at least once or twice, right? Or you do 2 backups, I think, right? So you're probably constantly running out of space.
It's a real problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I keep backups. I have 2 drives for everything. So data backup. Older data backup. Older data backup. And then there's a really old one that is stuff that's so old nobody will ever come back, and it's only on one old RAID that might explode at any moment, made up of all these haphazard schlocky drives. I don't even know why it boots every day. I don't even get why it runs at all, because it's so bad.
Just in case somebody calls and says, I need that file from 2007.
Yeah, I mean, I have stuff that's probably 20 years old in there. So, but I made the conscious decision with video stuff that I've decided to do. Oh, it's good to get to hear the air conditioner now. That's good. I've decided to keep 3 years stuff.
Okay.
For those of you that work in Final Cut, and I don't know, I assume it's the same. I don't remember actually if it's the same for the other video NLEs. I don't know. But in Final Cut, you have a choice of working offline, meaning the data is offline and not in the application, or online. I always work online. I bring everything in the system. So the first thing I do, so there's a sequence of events. So it's going to be a long, boring story, but there's a sequence of events. Let's say the oldest data, let's say 2020 in this particular case, 20, something like that. Yeah, because I'm doing 2021 and I'm going to be doing 2022. So I have 2 drives for 2020, and they're both 10 terabyte drives, and I have 2 terabyte left on them. And they're just full of stuff. Mm-hmm. They were jammed. There was no terabyte on them, and I went no room at all. And I went back and I pulled all of the source data, and I deleted it. And so I just kept all the Final Cut files with all the data in it, and I threw everything else away. So all the source material is gone. So I figured that's it. For 2 years ago, that's
But
what
the
they're going to get.
used
If
the
I can
used
go back and
clips are
edit it.
still saved.
Yeah.
The used clips are still saved. Okay, that's smart.
Yeah. And so now I got 2.5 terabyte on those drives. The other drives I was using for 2021 were 4 terabyte drives because this stuff's not. I mean, it's cheap. It's not that cheap, you know. And the problem is I ran out of room because there's this one thing I did for this guy, and it kept growing and growing and growing, and I don't want, because it's a 2020 2021 project. I don't want to get rid of the supplemental data because it's gonna. I know I'm gonna do something else for him down the road, and I know what's gonna happen. I'll throw
You need it, yeah.
Do you have that? And it's not gonna be in my final. It'll be just gone. So that alone was over 6 terabytes. So if you add that up and the rest of the stuff I did this year, I'm at, well, it's more than 4. You can see you're already over 4. So I had to get some drives. So I got two 12 terabyte drives. And I copied everything off. And now, for the first time in a long time, I have actually, my working RAID has 8 terabytes also. And my backup RAID has 10 terabytes. And it's, this is ridiculous. It sounds, I'm at like 60 terabytes of stuff. Anyway.
It's not a lot. I mean, there's people out there that do more.
If
you're a YouTuber, you probably have hundreds of terabytes of
that's right.
all the stuff you're working on on a daily basis. So I get it. No, it's a tough thing when you're dealing with video. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just terrible. So I've just decided I'm going to get rid of stuff. I'm going to ask everybody. They'll give me a chance to talk to a customer I haven't talked to anyway. But at the end of the year, when I'm about to dump 2020 or 2019, let's say, I'm going to ask them, do you care about this anymore? Because I can't keep this stuff forever, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the sequence. I had to rebuild the drive. I now have 2 4 terabyte drives that are sitting around, so I don't know what to do. But,
not to mention
storage is a problem.
I have a dock. They have spinning hard drives.
Yeah.
So
these are all spinning hard drives.
Yeah, some of them. But I mean, I have most of mine are portables.
Yeah.
That I use USB 3. Some are spinning, some are SSD. But then I have these old internals, 3.5 inch drives. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 1 terabyte just sitting around doing nothing. I mean, since I've converted over and put bigger drives and things, I have those as just working drive, but they're a little slow. But I have 8, 12, 16, 17, 18 and a half terabytes. So not quite as much as you do.
No, but that's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, someone's not doing.
And it's not all full. Like I said, the big 8 terabyte is just important backups. Everything else is just working drives. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's nutty. It's just crazy. Okay, so that's my terabyte story. Okay, so I have this musical issue.
Okay.
My musical issue, and this is not that new. I've had this for a very long time because I've toyed often with the idea of doing smaller group, 2, 3 people, which means you have to use backing tracks, or just do an acoustic thing. But that's not me. So, on and off for years, I've been toying with what's the best way to do that, to pull that off. And I think this might be interesting for a lot of people because there's a lot of people that have small clubs they could go play. And it's changed in terms of what's acceptable and what's not. I mean, people always wanted drummers and bass players and stuff. I'm a drummer, so I'm a little pissed about this, by the way. But smaller clubs, they want the sound of a drummer. They just don't want a drummer in the room because they don't have enough. Their stage is the size of a chair,
Yeah.
So I looked into this whole thing all over again. And let me start by saying that I did, in typical Marty fashion, I went down the most complex road possible because that's what I do.
That's how you do it.
That's what I do. So I got my hands on, let's say I borrowed, I got my hands on an Akai Force, which is, after playing with it a few days, first of all, it's a really beautiful piece of hardware. It hasn't sold really well. And I think it's its target audience that's I think that's it might. I bet it doesn't. I bet it doesn't last long. Let me tell you my theory about it. You tell me what you think. I think, for those of you who don't know, Akai makes several controllers. By far the most famous is the MPC line. I don't even know how old is the MPC. What was the first MPC? God, it's got to be 40 years
70s,
ago, right?
80s, yeah, late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. So very, very popular with hip hop artists and everything else. Story. Here's a segue. Here's a story. I'm not a fan of that kind of music personally, but I've never understood how it came to be, and I learned to listen to this story in the late 70s, in New York City. Funding got cut for musical instruments, particularly in poor areas. What a surprise, right? So people that used to have access at school to instruments to learn how to play them was gone. And because people are people, they started the whole revolution of sampling. And they did it because that was their instrument, because they could do it. Mm-hmm. And they started doing it with MPCs and stuff when they came out. But even that, actually Akai took advantage of that and just stole the market. But there's ways to do that. But I find that to be really interesting because I hadn't really contemplated the idea that the reason they were successful in creating this genre and others that have spawned from it are because they never really had the tools available to them.
It's true.
And I did not know that. And to me, it puts a new light on this for me. I still have issues with the music form because the musician side of me does. But I fully now understand why it exists. And above and beyond, it's the artistic side, of course. I'm not even arguing that part at all. But for me, it was a real learning thing. I didn't get that, and it was really fascinating to me. So that's my segue, but I'm fascinated by it. It really taught me a lesson.
That's interesting you say that because we've had back and forths about that for years.
Yeah.
About
the
validity of the
my
music.
Opinion about what the music represents from a musician's perspective. It
Sure.
doesn't mean none of that matters. What matters is that there's a reason for everything, and sometimes you miss the reason because you weren't part of it. And clearly, it was ignorance on my part.
No, but you now can appreciate why there's that type of music and stuff. Yeah.
So it's fascinating. Cool. It was fascinating to me. Okay, so that
1988 was the first MPC.
Was it? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So MPC. Let's get back on. Thank you for bringing me back to reality. So MPC is an interesting box. It's a box with a bunch of buttons and a screen. And as they've evolved through the years, you probably have way more knowledge about this than I am. Correct me if I'm wrong. But basically, they were pads that triggered samples, and you could sample sounds and loops, and you could put them together, and it kind of took the place. Well, originally it was just records, right? Scratching records, moving back and forth and stuff, and doing it manually. When MPCs came out, suddenly you could do all this stuff that you couldn't do, and it was not with a computer. It was a separate, standalone kind of a device.
Yeah.
And then then the computer era came out, and then everything went that way. So nowadays they make a couple of MPCs. They kind of are back in a way. The MPC X, I think, is a beautiful piece of hardware, and the MPC Live is really great because it's standalone in a way that it's got a battery, and you can basically take it anywhere. It's got little speakers, and it's really cool. So I get that. If you're into MPC, I can see why people just still love them, because that's what they grew up on, like everything else. I did not grow up that way, and I did not even understand anything about that, so I was very removed from it. But I did know something about looping because I used it to write with originally, and of course, when Ableton Live came out and all the loops and all the capabilities of Ableton Live, for years and years I thought, what a cool thing to do. And I've used Live, by the way, physically live, to do exactly what I'm talking about, backing tracks and stuff like that. But I always thought two things. The first thing I thought is, I wish there was a way to have this stand alone. I wish this was not dependent on a computer on stage, because I don't know why I don't trust them on stage. I use them all the time, but I don't. For some reason, I don't. I thought it'd be really cool to have a standalone thing. And the second thing is that, and this is a real problem, is that loading in songs are problematic, but you don't have a memory restriction in a computer because you can actually build one long song that might be in a set of material using the backing tracks. And for those of you who don't know how that works, you basically have a grid like this, and the grid, just like kind of like the back of Will's machine right there, where you have rows and columns representing tracks and different instruments, sections. So, and you could trigger any of those things by hitting any of those buttons at any one time, and that's how live worked. And that brings me to Akai's Force, which is basically live in a box. I mean, that's what it is. It's got its own drives. Well, you have to add one, but it's got some memory, and it's got a chip reader, and it also has space for an SSD in the bottom. So you can put a lot of stuff, and it's got some memory, somewhat limited memory. It's got the same grid. And by the way, the operating system today, now I heard when it first came out it was a disaster, but when I was playing, the one I was playing with, it was like a 3.06, which I think is absolutely current. And it is very nice. It is a really well designed and a piece of hardware, and it works a lot like Live does. And by the way, it also has live mode, Live Link. I don't know if anyone knows what that is. Basically, Ableton a while ago decided to make their. I mean, you can link many DAWs to many things, but Live Link is very specifically for Ableton Live to link to box controllers, and it has built into Force. And so you have a Cat5 network cable in back. You can plug it into your computer, and you can basically not only have all the functionality that's in your box, but also have all the functionality. So you can have it linked to your and control, not only control it, but also have the functionality built into the box itself.
That's interesting. So they reverse engineered what they had originally done was created a controller specifically to control Ableton Live.
Yeah.
It was called the APC series.
That's correct.
And it worked so well, control Ableton Live for what you wanted to do. Then they said, well, why don't we reverse engineer it to make it standalone? So you don't need the laptop or computer.
Yeah, when you say reverse engineer, it's more like they studied it and said, what can we do to duplicate this?
Without a
flow?
computer, yeah.
Yeah, without the computer.
Yeah.
And it works.
Okay.
It's pretty awesome, actually. It has all sorts of power in back. It has ports for all sorts of crazy things, MIDI and in and outs and microphones and lines ins, and it even has connectivity to synths. So it is a very cool machine. I liked it a lot. But remember the problem I had with loading things? It's the same problem. You can't just get a bunch of songs in because you're limited in memory. And by the way, it does play it out of memory. What happens is you can bring it in from your hard drive quickly, and then it'll play. And I have no problems with it. It runs perfectly. I never ran it in memory or anything like that. But you don't have the unlimited memory you have in a
computer,
like a PC or something that you can actually have 100 songs or something like that. You can't do that with this, and that was the deal breaker.
Limitation, yeah. That's too bad.
Plus, from a use perspective, it does a million things that I don't need. It has 4 synths built into it. It even worked, by the way, I couldn't believe this. It even worked with my Fishman dongle. I could plug in my triple play, and it saw it as a MIDI device, which was cool. And all you had to do is select the track that you had a MIDI device, because it works with MIDI and audio.
Okay.
And if you select any MIDI device, which it has 4 built in, or you can go outside and come back in through a modular or whatever. This guy will allow you to play from your guitar in and out of the box. That's cool.
And
here's the thing: it's a music creation tool. It's a standalone music creation tool, and it's not limiting you to saying, okay, start here, but move it into Live if you want. And it will import Live files directly.
Oh, wow.
Which is really, I'm telling you, this thing is really great. So
I wonder if Ableton allowed them to do that. Yeah. I wonder if Ableton allowed them to do that, or they just did that.
I think they've been working with Ableton for years, and I think it doesn't replace it. Although, maybe someday it might. I don't know. It depends on how good the hardware gets. It's a great piece of hardware. I do not in any way belittle it. I give it kudos. It doesn't work for me. Okay, so now that I've explained all the stuff that it can do, and it does even more than that, the problem I have with it is it does all those things, and I don't need any of them to do what I'm talking about. And the one thing I really needed to do, it doesn't do very well.
Yeah.
So then I started looking into alternatives. And that brings me to looper pedals and all sorts of different devices. But I have a unique thing. I want to be able... One of the reasons that Live is so great, Ableton Live is so great, is that when you're doing a live performance, you can break up your songs in a way that they're in sections. And that section might be a verse, and then the next section might be a chorus, next section might be, an ending, whatever. It doesn't this. You have control not only of that section, the fly, live, the individuals within that. Say you have a bass player that doesn't show today, and you got stems for the bass player part. Say, okay, I'm going to use that. There's your bass player. So not only do you have the control over the individual sections of the song, you also have control over each part. And if a bass player doesn't show up that day, you can use them if you've recorded all those parts, or a drummer, or whatever. Or maybe you have a band that shrinks and grows depending on the size of the room, which is what we're talking about. So because of all that, I have to figure some way to do that. And the problem with looper pedals is that they don't have individual controls over things. The only thing that even comes close to it is the what's that ginormous pedal board? I can't think of it now. Something heads. What is it? Looper something, looper deck or whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But none of them have that ability. None of them. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So I did a bunch of research. Guess what I came up with? Everyone's doing it with iPads.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you something. This is pretty cool. Let me see if I can get this to work. So okay. So there's a bunch of different apps that I've played with. One is Multi-Tracker, which is right here, and it's pretty good. There's about 6 or 7 or 8 different things that do these things, but the one that really struck me as being the most complete, and this is pretty cool, is this thing called StageMaster. StageMaster, that's it. Why is this cool? Well, I'll tell you why. Let me show you the whole thing, and tell me this isn't really slick. So here's your configuration. It's strange looking. It doesn't look. It's not. I wouldn't say it's pretty. Let me just say that. But you have a dashboard, and then you can add songs and parts and all that kind of stuff. But here's the really amazing thing. So here's your configuration. You can control individual functions with a, let me see if I can change this, with one of these. With a Bluetooth switch. So let me show you what this does. So basically, you can start and stop. Are you hearing that? Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay. You can loop a section. You can move to another part. You can move to the last part. You can do a bunch of things. These are the ones that I care about. Right? So I did last song, last part, next part, stop, play, stop, and loop on a specific function. Why did I want that? Well, because if I'm playing, let's say I'm playing the intro, okay, and want to go to, let me skip to the melody. It does it just like live. It moves, boom. Okay, so within, it finishes that section. And now let's say I want to loop over it. So I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to loop. So now it's just going to play it over. And then when I'm done, I'll go back to regular mode. And I'm going to play the next part, which is the It's cool. I mean, that's pretty cool. So let me stop this. So that is cool, but it does more than that. But wait. It does lyrics.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. So here I'm going to do it with lyrics and chords. I don't know if you can see that. So now, of course, there's no lyrics here because it's not really lyrics. But the point is, you can time this to sections, and it will track to the section, which is really cool. I don't need that, but it's not so bad to have chords on stage. But someone, a singer, could do this. Here's another really amazing thing. Let me see if I can find this part. You can send MIDI and audio to separate tracks, separate audio outputs. So if you have a multi-channel audio card on your iPad, you can send separate feeds to a specific channel on a board. Which basically
that's pretty advanced for an iPad app.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
So ask me what that cost.
What, the app or the pedal?
The app.
99 cents.
No, it's not bad cheap, but
No,
25
bucks. Yeah, see, that's not
lifetime. Bad. Yeah, you can actually pay less than that if you don't want a lifetime license, but $30. So now, Ableton, I'm not Ableton, but Akai Force is $1,100. Now, I have an iPad. My iPad's not a cheap iPad. I have a pedal. This pedal is $140. If you add all that up, it's not that cheap, but it does a trillion other things, right?
Yeah.
So, you can see that this might be the solution to this kind of a problem. It was for me. What do you think?
It's interesting. I like it. It's good. It's a good. It's a great solution, but
okay,
it's still, as I see it. We've had this discussion before, but I'm playing devil's advocate here. It's the same as having a laptop on stage with you. It's still not really a standalone device. You have to rely on the reliability. You have to rely on the reliability of all those things working together, which I'm not saying, won't or is not any more or less stable than a laptop, but I think it's just the same. I think that laptop's just as reliable as an iPad.
I do too. Fortunately, we have a couple iPads in the house. Now, I just bought Joe Joe just got an iPad Air. It's much smaller. Looks the same, but it's much smaller. But I don't think this takes a whole lot of horsepower. And the iPad Air is pretty fast. It's a new one too. So I could bring a second iPad and load it up with the same stuff and get it all set up. And if for some weird reason I dropped this thing, or for some reason it just decided to crap out on me, swapping it out is fast. Because audio card off, audio card on, plug in and play. Instant on. So much more efficient than a Mac. Mac scared me. Not Macs, but computers live scare me more than iPads. And maybe that's a mistake on my part. But I can see this being...
Not if it does the trick. If it does the work, then... But yeah, I see it's probably a little easier to carry and set up than a whole computer. I just think you could probably do just a little bit more with the laptop than you could.
You can do a
with
lot more with a laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
A
do you know
lot
anything
more.
about
It's
Audiobus?
gonna be nice. No. What is Audiobus? The
Ooh,
software?
yeah. Let me show it to you because it's kind of a big deal. Let's go back to the iPad and to the. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this Audiobus. Let me see if I can find it. Audiobus is a slick tool that allows you to take on an iPad an input from some source file, like a synthesizer, whatever, and an effect, and send it to an output. So you can bring one device, one piece of software, and it's like multitasking. And it will be readable by any audio device compatible software. So if you have a synth or if you have a DAW or something that's running that will actually see Audiobus, and a lot of them do, like Cubases, etc. You have the ability to actually add. So let's add a Model 15 to a mini rack as an effect. So it's launching it.
Just taking a nap. It's taking a nap.
I don't know what that's
See,
about.
I told you. No, I'm just kidding.
And then to GarageBand, let's say. So it's going to load GarageBand, I hope.
Just taking a nap.
Yeah, it's kind of
Not very reliable. Just kidding.
Are you? Oh, you know what? It's me.
Tap to launch.
Yeah, it's my
tap
fault.
to launch it.
What a dummy. Because this thing's fast. So Audiobus is connected. So that means that synth is now part of GarageBand. So GarageBand, Audiobus is connected, running in the background, can now be switched on, but we'll turn off once Audiobus has been connected. So,
so I'm confused. Then what is it that you're doing?
well, basically, you're linking a synth that's not built into something like on the iPad, which is not at all like. It's much akin to a plugin. It allows you to have plugins into, so you can actually have pieces of software that are made to do this.
That piano is not included in GarageBand?
This one is, but I haven't selected it. So I don't know how to do it. I've never done this, actually. But let me see if I can do it. I got to start. Oh, I have to start the synth. This is my fault, too. There it is. Okay. So that's the synth. And I don't exactly know. Oh, look at that. I wonder if I can do a... Are you hearing this? I can't tell because I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, I can hear the piano.
You're hearing a piano. Okay, how do I get it to play that? Oh, wait a minute. Audiobus. What about now? Still piano?
Still, yep.
I don't know how this... Oh, look at that. That's pretty cool. I've probably completely blown that thing. Anyway, I don't know exactly know how it works, but the point is that you can use synths and stuff that are not built into an app.
I was confused. I didn't understand why you opened up 3 apps at the same time, and it's because you're trying to link a standalone app into
and I don't know what I'm doing.
Like
so
yeah. No, I'm not. That's not what I was trying to get at. But I see you can use because there was a point when iPad had a ton of great Korg replicants,
and they do.
All these synths, but they were just standalone apps, and you could use them with other stuff, and that's a cool little bridge to get them to work together. Yeah. I see. That's kind of cool.
Exactamundo. That is correct. So that's a cool toy. I haven't played with it much because I don't play synths and I don't care about doing that on an iPad. But the point is that the iPad's a little more powerful. This piece of hardware is so overpowered for what, frankly, the limitation, there's been a lot of discussion about this lately, but the new iPad with the M1 in it is incredibly overpowered for the operating system. The operating system just is so limited. It's incredibly limited because they built all this power into this crazy thing, and frankly, you just don't even come close to using it all. So
yeah.
That's my story, and I'm sticking
That's
to it.
crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the solution. I think that's everything I got. You got anything that you want to say besides?
Update 3 or 4 maybe on my experience of leaving the Mac world for
Oh yeah,
the. I mean the
or the
Windows.
PC
Did I say
world.
Mac
Yeah.
world? The PC world for the Mac world. Um, Extremely powerful. Handles everything I could throw at it. I did. We we've talked about our addiction to buying Pixel Film Studios, so I bought another one, which are called reveals. So they're basically little intros that end. They not transition, but we'll take. For example, the one I used was a title intro with 6 drop zones that were cut into little strips that faded into the next. Introduced the rest of the film or video that I was working on. I dropped 4K clips from my drone,
Hmm.
and it rendered out in that plus maybe a minute and a half of 4K drone footage. It
Mm-hmm.
rendered in like 9 minutes. So I know it doesn't
Wow.
sound like a lot, but
Oh no, that's
when you're
fast.
talking all that 4K video,
Yeah,
9 minutes of render time for a minute and a half video is crazy to me.
that's
And
unbelievably fast.
it had one dropped frame, and that was just because I was trying to scrub the preview of that intro or that reveal plugin while it was still pre-rendering,
Hmm.
and that was the only time I've ever seen a problem. The biggest problem I have is the Wi-Fi dropping issue. So I can't use it for podcasting because I, for some reason, can't figure out why. There's sometimes I can go hours and hours and hours without dropping Wi-Fi, and there's times when I'm on calls with you or some other people or streaming video, and it just drops every 30 seconds, and it's just unusable. So
You should
I have to
explain.
switch.
You should explain your circumstance. Why there's no reason why the Mac should do it and PC doesn't.
Oh,
None. So
well,
that's a problem. But you should
that's a good
explain
point.
what your problem is.
The Wi-Fi just cuts out, even though it says I'm connected. It literally will just freeze it. Whatever I'm doing on the internet, whether it's streaming Netflix or Comcast videos or talking to people through video conferencing software, it just freezes. It says I'm still connected, but if I do a speed test, it's 0. So it's connected to the router, as is my work laptop, which is sitting right next to the Mac, and then my desktop is right underneath it in the same part of the house, which is not direct line of sight, but there's a window here, and my router is in another room in the living room with a window that's kind of 6 feet away. And again, it's not a straight line of sight because there's wood glass and some blinds, but none of the other computers have this problem.
Yeah, it
My
sounds to me
daughter has
like the MacBook has a crap Wi-Fi
maybe,
modem.
but my wife has an M1 MacBook Air, does not have this problem. My son have Intel MacBook Pros. That doesn't happen anywhere in the house. We have 3 PCs, 2 laptops, and 1 desktop. Doesn't happen any of those. Our phones, and I'm sitting right here, and I'll do a speed test on my phone, and the signal never drops. So I'm just trying everything. Like the latest thing said, turn off Bluetooth. So I turn off Bluetooth, and I've been testing for a couple days, and it still happens. So I'm about to take it in the Mac store when I get a chance. I've just
I would
been
absolutely bring it
doing
back
a
to them because
bunch of stuff.
I think they have I think they have a defective modem.
Yeah. And there's not a lot out in the internet about people having this issue.
Yeah.
There are some people that have speed issues, but it's not that it goes to 0. It just it slows down.
Yeah.
Mine drops all signal and goes to 0. Nothing, no connection to the internet. So unfortunately, it's a problem, but I'm trying to get through it. That's a pretty big problem, so I'd like to figure it out. But
Yeah.
overall, everything else I'm completely happy with,
Good.
except for that.
Yeah. No, it sounds to me like you might have a problem. I mean, it sounds like hardware to me, or there's something wrong with the design of that particular Mac.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be, but I bet you they'll give you a new one, which means, of course, you have to do all this backup stuff and restore all. Oh my lord! You have a lot of stuff in there, plugins and.
Yeah, everything's in there. I put everything I own in there.
Do a backup and restore, I guess.
Maybe I should just try wiping it clean and doing it myself first before I take it in.
Oh God, that's double work. Of course, you don't have to do any of the stuff. You just test the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I could before I install everything.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be the first time. Have you reinstalled the OS?
That's what I'm saying.
No, but you don't have to wipe it clean to do that.
Oh, no,
You
I
have no
not.
idea how many times. I know this one doesn't sound like this should be fixed this way, but I will tell you, I've been using them for years, and I've never had a problem reinstalling an OS over anything. I've never lost a thing, and it's fixed a lot of stuff it shouldn't have
I'll
fixed.
try that, especially if it leaves everything intact. I would love to try that.
It absolutely does.
Why not? Yeah, why not?
Well, it absolutely should. It always has for me. I'm not guaranteeing it will for you, but I'm just saying it is. I've never not one time do I remember ever, and I've done it, I don't know, 30 times over the years, and I've never ever had Mac OS wipe out the build. It just replaced stuff that may have gone corrupt.
Okay.
But this still sounds like a hardware problem to me. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but it sounds like a hardware problem.
It's just odd. It's usually all or nothing, right? It either works or it doesn't work, not intermittently. I don't know. You know, I feel like there's a bunch of software stuff I've tried, and there was a couple people that had this problem, and Apple support said, "Oh, well, try this, try that, try this, try that." None of it worked, and then they say, "Oh, it's your router settings." Well, if it's my router settings, why do three other Macs,
including
two
Macs,
PCs, and one Mac M1, two Intel MacBook Pro? Like,
that's
not.
bullshit.
It's specifically this computer, you know.
That's a garbage can.
Yeah. In other news, I got a new mouse, and I think you've been using these for years.
Yeah, I have.
The MX Master 3.
Yep.
I love this thing.
They're
this
awesome.
Thing,
they're the best mouse on the planet.
The one thing I have a problem with is this magnetic wheel. I understood that. I don't know. I like it. You do single clicks, and then you throw it, and it's like zzz.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, most of my mouses have that button changes the DPI. So then I clicked it, and I'm like, I didn't realize it deactivated the magnet. I'm like, oh, it's broke. I broke the mouse. It doesn't click anymore. The wheel doesn't click. I didn't realize that was just to deactivate that clicking thing on the mouse. I mean, on the wheel. I keep saying the mouse. But I like it. It's very nice.
Oh, no,
the battery life is amazing.
Yeah, I in fact, I use Logitech mouse and keyboard always. For years now.
But it's so comfortable. It's really different than, like, the profile is a lot taller, and I thought that was going to be an issue. But after about 2 days, I got used to it. It feels so natural.
It does.
It just feels right. And all my other mouses, Mice. A gaggle of mouses are Mices.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. All my previous mouses were a lot thinner, and I always just thought, I just got used to it, and I thought that was cool. And if I've been looking at a new mouse for a while. My son got a MX gaming mouse that I was like, this is kind of cool. So then I started looking at those, and I ended up with the MX Master.
Yeah,
MX
I love it.
3 Master.
I had the MX2, I had the MX1, and
I thought so. They look familiar. The one thing I got, it's hard to get used to, is that wing with the button in it. But you could do so much with it.
It is.
And at least on a Mac, you just click it and grab. Oh, it does the same thing here. Holy wow! I could change desktops.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's definitely. I think it's the best mouse on the market. They sell them like mad. So you should see your face.
Yeah, I popped a screen up and it threw OBS at me. So anyway, that's all I've really got going on this week.
Yeah. Okay, so
I definitely want to get this computer problem pinpointed.
For sure.
The Wi-Fi.
Okay, so the next podcast we're going to do, there's going to be some announcements. There's going to be some special stuff, and we will talk about it more then. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but because I think I'm shooting next weekend. So,
okay.
But maybe on Sunday, we'll see. But sometime in the near future, we will be doing a podcast that's somewhat special. Let me just say special. And we will talk about that when the time comes. So I think that's really all we got until then. And I believe we are done, Mr. Will.
All right.
So until next time.
Same
bye-bye.
bad time, same bad channel.
Same bad channel, same bad. Okay. See you next time. Bye.
All right. Bye.